Hello, everybody. It's your boy Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming here today. Which Xenoblade game is best? Very simple question, bit of a difficult answer though. I've tried to make this video 3 times so far. We are going to get it right this time! And I have not been able to decide if I want to do spoilers or be a non-spoiler video. We're gonna go full spoilers. We're gonna split this topic into 3 separate videos. One for Xenoblade Chronicles 1, one for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and guess what the third video is going to be for? That's right, Xenoblade Chronicles X. I joke. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. For this video, we're going to break Xenoblade Chronicles 1 down into 2 sections. Its strengths and weaknesses. And then we'll bring it all together with the final conclusions. So, Xenoblade Chronicles 1. The first thing that you notice when you boot this game up is how good the world design is. Oh my god, is there a game out there with a better set piece than the Bionis and the Mechonis? Like, you really gotta think about that, right? Like, it's so striking and unique. The idea that the entire game is set upon these 2 massive giants, these behemoths, that have worlds all of their own on their bodies. Like, having these colonies, these areas be based upon their limbs, it's such a cool concept that just breathes really cool and unique ideas. I want to know what that meeting was like, right? Like, who came up with this? Like, how did they plan this out? I just want to see what the creative design for this was. Because climbing up the Bionis is such a beautiful form of subtle progression, to where you know in the back of your mind, hey, I am making progress here. We start from the bottom, we're like on the thing's ankle or something. We work our way up the thigh, the leg. We go inside it for a little bit, and a little bit of a suspect location, I'm not going to lie to you. And then we like on its back. Then we get to its head. It's such a beautiful way to show progression without just saying, hey, you're 50% of the way through the game. Because you don't need that. Because you can just look at where you are on the freaking thing. It's such a cool idea. The Bionis and the Mechonis are such a beautiful world to set it on, because not only is it visually cool and impressive to look at, but also the questions that it raises immediately are questions that just linger in your mind as you're playing the game. Where the hell did the Bionis and the Mechonis come from? Are these things gonna wake up at any time and have like another sword fight? I'm not sure if Shulk and Crow can sustain that whiplash. I'm just saying, there are questions that floated in my mind. Where did these things come from? Was there a world out there before? What's with all the water that these things are surrounded by? Is there any other land out there? Questions upon questions upon questions that grab you and hold you tight as you boot up the game and watch that first cutscene. And that's just like the first 2 minutes. And you already have all these questions that you want the answers to. So like right off the jump, right off rip, you know that this is going to be a good game, right? Like, story-wise. But what Xenoblade Chronicles 1 does so well, and I think does better than any other component of its storytelling, in my opinion, is not even its world design. Like, you go into Xenoblade 1 expecting a setting-based story. No, it's a character-based story. And its characters are really good, really fleshed out, and well-developed. They have their own personal interests, their desires, wants, needs, dislikes, weaknesses, flaws. They feel real. They really do. Despite how silly the world is, despite how out there the concept is, the characters ground everything and draw you in, because they are that well designed, that well voiced, and that well developed. It's a truly impressive cast of characters in a truly impressive world. And what Xenoblade 1 does so well story-wise, outside of just its characters, I would consider its world to be one pillar, its characters to be another pillar, and then its third main pillar is honestly how it tackles expectations. Like, you go into a JRPG, right, and you see the main character that's probably going to get like some kind of like magic sword or some kind of magic power-up. You have the dumb guy who's really strong. And then you also have the girl who's like kind of a love interest with the main character. Like, okay, this is probably going to be like your main party here. And they kill off Fiora immediately. And that cutscene, it's not even the fact that they kill off Fiora. It's the cutscene afterwards that gets me. With Shulk and Rein at the park, overlooking all of Colony 9. And Ryan's like, I'm going to have to convince you to go on this revenge revenge tour with me, aren't I? And Shulk is like, no, you're not. You're not gonna need to convince me. I'm already convinced. Let's go do this. Let's go get some revenge. And I just sat back in my chair with like my hands on my head or something, going, "Oh my god, this is a revenge story." It blew my mind. I'm like, I was not expecting them to kill off Fiora, and for them to do a revenge story. I was expecting it to be like some kind of like hero's tale about having to realize, hey, this isn't how the world's supposed to be. We got to go fix it, beat the mechanists, the bad guys, and go on with it. Right? I kind of expected that to be the case, but it wasn't. It was a very grounded human story about feelings and emotions, about anger and despair, and all these negative emotions going around in their mind with the loss of their childhood friend and Fiora. Not only that, but you have a bunch of cool robots you're fighting against. I'm like, okay, I'm rocking with this. I'm feeling this. Okay, show me what you got, Monolith. Show me what you got. Because Xenoblade 1, it subverts your expectations at nearly every turn. It understands what you're thinking going into a scene, what you're expecting, and it knows how to play on them. Because sometimes it gives in. Sometimes it lets you expect something, and then it will do that thing. It will lull you into a false sense of security. Not only just to emotionally gut punch you right afterwards. It knows what the player is thinking. It's great at this psychological aspect in terms of playing on how the player is probably feeling or thinking at any current moment and using that to its advantage. Not to just tell an emotional story for the sake of telling an emotional story, or to subvert your expectations solely to subvert your expectations. No, it does it in such a way to keep your attention so that it can tell its compelling story with its meaningful themes and messages. And to me, that is one of the hallmarks of a phenomenal video game story. When it recognizes that you are a player, you have probably played games like this. You probably understand many of the themes and motifs that we're probably going to try and instill upon you. You probably understand a lot of the overall tropes that can be present in this genre of hero-based JRPG. We're going to understand that you know that. We got a message to tell you. We got a unique way of telling it to you. Here is this story. Go wild with it. And the story is perfectly well paced, in my opinion. It's one of the strongest aspects of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, is how well paced the main story is. Not only is the main story well paced, Shulk is a phenomenal protagonist. He really is, and I love how he doesn't just feel like a JRPG protagonist. He has emotions, he has his own likes and dislikes. He feels like a character that is being affected by the world around him. He has his morals, he has his principles, but he also has his emotions, and I like that about him. And Ryan complements him perfectly, because Ryan also feels like a person. He has his own likes, he has his own desires, he has his own worries, his own fears. He also just feels real. And that's one of the strongest aspects of this game. The cast of characters is phenomenal. Melia is a phenomenal character as well. Dunban's a great character in terms of how he turns in, how he's like the kind of like the teacher to Shulk and Ryan throughout a lot of the game, teaching them, okay, this is how you're going to survive out in the wild, this is how you're going to be like a soldier and all that. This is how you fight. He's kind of like that guiding marker for Shulk and Ryan, that Polaris on the horizon that they're eternally trying to chase. And at the end of the game, Dunban has to learn from Shulk emotionally to not let his anger cloud him, because it clouded Shulk for a long time in this game. And I love how they developed that. Because it's such a long game, they're able to tell all these little stories and have all these plot threads throughout the game that they can work on, they can build off of. They can wrap up and then use that wrap up, use the development you got in that one little bit of story back there, and use it hours later in another story to make it compelling. The villains are phenomenal. Seriously. You have villains that you emotionally relate to, villains that are just villains for the sake of being villains, and they both work. They are all really, really well written. You have the metal-faced Mechon, you have Egil, you have Zanza, you have Dixon. All these characters, they work. Because one, they're well voice acted, so they don't come across as cheesy. They have interesting stories, interesting interactions with other characters. They make the world better, they make the characters better, they tell a compelling story. Egil, man, oh my god, his story still gets me. he's such a well-written antagonist. Because, yeah, he's a villain. Not for a second do you doubt that he's a villain. And the way they are able to make him compelling by the end, magnifique. And then you have Zanza, who is also another well-written character. Like, this video will go on for way too long if I get into exactly why these characters are so well-written. I need to do a series about them. But Zanza, with his false ideas of being a god when he actually isn't. Like, someone pointed out to me in a Discord how this game really tackles the concept of Gnosticism, where there's this, what people suspect to be a god was actually another god above them, and that, like, middle god, that is Zanza, and that's a really cool idea to tackle in a video game, and to tackle in a story like this. And those antagonists, they make the protagonist better, more compelling, because the threat they're up against, it feels larger than life. They feel like, hey, we might not win this battle. We might not. We don't know if this game's going to have a happy ending. And the way they're able to toy with your emotions and to toy with your idea of expectations throughout this entire main story is really something to be lauded. And not only that, but oh my god, for a 100-hour JRPG, you need to have not only great gameplay, not only a phenomenal story, but that soundtrack has to be good because you'll be listening to a lot. And Xenoblade Chronicles 1 soundtrack, I mean, do I even need to say anything about it? It's phenomenal. That final song, oh my god. The song in the Mechonis, when you're exploring and going around it, beautiful. The battle theme, oh my god. And honestly, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 has some of my favorite locations of any Xenoblade game ever. Honestly, of any game ever. Satol Marsh at night, when I first saw that, with the ethereal lights glowing and emanating from the trees, going up, going to God knows where. That is such a striking visual. Ever see both at day with its beautiful blue oceans and the sky above and the rocky islands jutting in the surface of the water and above it. It's such a cool visual with Alchemoth and Prison Island. And not only that, but also at night, where how each of those, like, floating islands emanates a greenish glow from its bottom. It's such a compelling visual. How each of these zones can look so fundamentally different from day and night that it makes you want to explore and just drink in the scenery. I love it when an area in a game is beautiful enough where I just want to look at it, right? And that is Xenoblade Chronicles 1. It shows that, hey, you do not need to have the highest gen console. You do not need to have the highest graphical fidelity or the most pixels or the best texture quality or the best lighting ever to make a compelling visual or to make some beautiful environments. You don't. You just need really good art direction, great use of lighting, and great use of color. And the way that Xenoblade 1 is able to do this, and then you get the freaking Mechonis, right? Like, oh my god, the Mechonis City is so beautiful in terms of its scale. What Xenoblade 1 gets right is that, hey, even if we're on the freaking Nintendo Wii or the Nintendo Switch and we don't have all the latest and greatest hardware ever, we can still show some phenomenal scaling in terms of the world. And it sucks you in because it feels like a world that you want to explore. How larger than life each of these locations feel. It's immersive, and I love and I eat that stuff up. And not only that, right, but the gameplay. I think the gameplay is really good. I love how each party member feels so fundamentally different to one another, and how many builds you can really go with for each of these characters. One of my favorite characters is honestly Fiora, just because I find it hilarious how there's a build out there, right, where you can make her do more double attacks because she attacks quite often. She has a very high attack speed, so you can give her double attack buffs, so she double attacks quite often. And then every time she double attacks, you can make it so that she crits. And then every time she crits, you can make it so that all those crits heal her. So she can be like this pseudo tank that just heals herself constantly because she's doing double attacks almost every half second. It's hilarious. And then with Dunban, you can make it so he just takes off all of his clothes and becomes an agility-based tank. With Shulk, you have so much utility with the Monado art. It's so good. And then with Melia, she deserves a video all of herself just for her mechanics because she's so well designed mechanically. I love how her elements interact with the party members, how there's so much thought and depth to her mechanics. And I love how there's a spectrum, right, in terms of how simple or how complex you can make pretty much every character in this game. And I love that. It's new beginner, it's new player friendly, and it's veteran player friendly. And I love how they're able to weave those two together. The affinity system is a really cool concept, and I like trying to develop these relationships between these NPCs over time. But it does kind of tie into the weaknesses, and this video is going on quite a long time. So I'm going to just kind of broad stroke this. Weaknesses to the side quests, honestly. That's the biggest one for me. There's just far too many side quests that have too many generic RPG, like collectathon or killathon based elements, where it's just go collect this or go kill this, and that's just kind of it. There are some side quests that genuinely do add to the world or add to certain characters that'll flesh out relationships that have multiple decisions that you can make that affect the outcome and affect various relationships. Some that foreshadow future events or give additional context to certain main story characters and villains. I really like that. Especially that, like, one-faced mechon with a giant hammer. How there's a side quest you can do back in Colony 9 that kind of reveals who he was in a previous life. I really like that. But again, what are like 90% of these like 500 plus side quests? Go kill X, go collect Y. It's really tedious and they just don't stop, right? There's far too many of them to where they feel like filler. And if you go about trying to do a 100% run, like I tried to do, it really harms the pacing. But again, if you ignore most of that, then the main story is perfectly paced in my opinion. I just really wish we had Xenoblade Chronicles 1's like main story alongside the side quest systems or the side quest ideas and philosophies that we have in Xenoblade 2 and 3. You combine those two, I feel the game will go up in another tier than where it already is. Also, Melia in the base game never really had a satisfying conclusion to me. Like, I get what they were trying to do with her story, I really do. And I do really like her as a character. She's very fun, and I really like how she kind of represents, hey, not everything's going to go right for you, and you're not guaranteed a happy ending. You're not guaranteed to be with the people you think you love. I really like how they handled that. I just, at the end of it, like that second half, when you get to Mechonis, they just feel a little bit too on and off with her, where she's either in almost every scene or she isn't. And I feel like I wanted that to be a little bit more spread out and be a little bit more consistent. But we do get future connected, so that does give me the ending I'm really happy with for Melia. That kind of like wrapped up her story with a nice bow for me. So overall, I'm really satisfied with how her character overall landed. I really enjoyed that. The ending now. This might be a little bit controversial. I feel like it was a little rushed, like for how long of a JRPG this game really was and how many hours it took to beat it. You kind of just beat Zanza, called a GG, Shulk has his like dream with everybody there. Alvin says, "I got you, jabroni," and then says, "Hey, you want to recreate the world?" He says, "Yes, without gods." And then you get the final cutscene. I'm like, I kind of just wanted one additional cutscene just to really round things out because of how long this game was. I just kind of like wanted a little bit more. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back to the strengths for a minute, but that final cutscene, ooh, it's so good. It really is. That final cutscene is so well choreographed, and I love how it's through the perspective of Fiora, so you still have that like lingering question, hey, is she okay now, or is she not? And I love how you get the conclusion, this sense of finality for all these characters. I really like that. Again, sans Melia, but you get that with Future Connected. And overall, at the very end, I'm like, I'm really glad I played this game. I really am. Because here's a spoiler alert, by the way. All three Xenoblade Chronicles games, again, except for X, because they don't even remember that they made X, Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 are all in my top 10 games of all time. I'm going to enjoy all three of these games. But I really enjoyed Xenoblade 1 and what it did and what it tried to do. And I loved how they tried to learn from Xenoblade 1 when they made 2 and 3. But Xenoblade 1's always going to hold like a special place in my heart because of the story that it told, especially with Zanza. Again, I'm going to need to do a series like I've been doing with 3, breaking down all these individual components because there's so much more to say and talk about with Xenoblade Chronicles 1. Its villains, its main characters, its locations, its story, its music, its environments. There's so much more. But overall, those are my general thoughts for Xenoblade Chronicles 1. Should you play it? Absolutely. I know I kind of just like spoiled the ending there, but still. Xenoblade 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm going to talk about exactly why when I get to its part in the series. But in terms of which Xenoblade game is best, this is going to be a hard one to beat. But we'll see. What do the other Xenoblade games, 2 and 3, what do they have better? What do they do better than Xenoblade Chronicles 1? And what did they get worse than Xenoblade Chronicles 1? You'll have to watch and see. So thank you all for tuning in. Leave a comment down below with your favorite aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and your least favorite aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives on this phenomenal game. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe with everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.